Hello again. Now we're going to talk about lesson aims and goals. Up until now, I've been using the word steps. How many steps or what kinds of steps we need in order to get to the goal, which is to learn the skill. Think of steps as lessons, because lessons are like stepping stones. Lessons help to direct a course, and that's why they're used throughout education. They act as a guide for learners. When learners look at the titles of lessons, they know what is going to be covered and what is expected of them. Each lesson has a goal. So as I said earlier, each lesson has a purpose to get to a goal, and ultimately that goal is what is known as a learning outcome. Why are you doing the lesson? Why are you teaching the lesson? What's the purpose? What do you want learners to achieve at the end of that particular period of learning? So learning outcomes are usually written as statements. Hopefully they're friendly and easy to understand. They will tell other stakeholders, such as learners or anyone else who's interested in looking at the course, what will be achieved by the end of the lesson. And each lesson goal should be observable and measurable. In other words, at the end of a lesson or at the end of a whole course, there might be a test. In order to test something, it needs to be something that you can measure. But don't get worried about these terms at the moment. Let's just move forward. So here are some examples of the beginnings of learning outcomes. The first one, I want students to realize and gain knowledge of. It's a bit too general. Look at the second one. Students should be able to recognize and explain. So you have these action words, recognize, explain. Or you might be able to test whether someone recognizes something by, for example, showing them a picture. Or you might want someone to explain something. The third one, students will know how to complete and efficiently. So complete, well, a lot of things can be completed. Efficiently, well, how do you know if it was done efficiently? If you look at the fourth example, students will be able to solve and recommend. So if you look at those action words, solve, recommend, perhaps you're going to give a maths test. Can the person solve that particular area that you're testing? The same goes with recommend. So let's go over some things to make sure that you've understood fully what a learning outcome is. So firstly, state clearly what your learners should be able to do by the end of a period of time, for example, at the end of a lesson, at the end of a course, but it needs to be very clear what learners should be able to do. So have a look at the learning outcome that you've written, reflect on it. Does it make sense? Make sure that your learning outcome is specific. It focuses on something and that it can be measured. And what do we mean by measured? Something that you can assess easily. As you put together your learning outcomes, think about how specific they are. Can you assess them easily? Is the language clear? It may be clear for you, but what about the reader? What about the learner, the other stakeholder? And does it state clearly what needs to be achieved? So I'd like you to try and create 5 learning outcomes. If you look at the examples we have here, they're in 3 parts. You have the first part, what will the learners be able to do at the end of the lesson? And then in the middle, you have an action word. So here I say explain. But explain what? In this example, how best to deal with a customer complaint. If you look at the second one, again, you have the beginning of the statement. At the end of the lesson, the student should be able to do what? What's the action? Well, they should be able to recommend. Recommend what? If you look at the last part, the most appropriate treatment for the patient, if we assume that the skill you're teaching has something to do with patients. So try not to get too worried at this stage. You're still learning. So at this stage, tried to create 5 learning outcomes using the skills and the steps that you've already written down. But don't worry, you'll get there in the end. We're still learning. Until the next time, goodbye.